So again, thank you guys for coming to this webinar. We have an awesome webinar planned today on Lectora action groups, and we have with us Tim Ball, who is very good at what he does with Lectora, and he's been a contractor for eLearning Brothers for a long time, and recently came on full time about 6 months ago. So we're really excited to have him with us and to discuss action groups and things like that, so we can improve our projects and our games and things like that we build in Lectora. So I'm going to hand over that screen to him. Just a second, and then we'll get started.
All right, guys. My name is Tim Ball, as Taylor was kind enough to introduce. Is everybody hear me okay? We got proof of life out there? I guess there's something I can check myself. But I'm a first-timer, so bear with me here as I get... All right, great. Green lights. How do I get rid of that? All right, so again, hi, I'm Tim Ball, and today we're going to talk about action groups. Just your low, mid-level, mid-tier development stuff, nothing too crazy, too wild, but if it is crazy and wild, hopefully I'll make some sense of it. First thing I'd like to do is show you this nice little outline I've got. We're just going to get started. We're going to group our contents with action groups using them as object groups, and we're going to put that stuff into little containers, make your development workspace and your layouts of your projects a little cleaner, a little easier to navigate, and ultimately easier for anybody else who's got to get into your file and look at. So that's a best practice that I'm going to implement and excuse me, and preach today. Another thing we're going to do is we're not going to store objects and actions, but we're going to fire those things in sequence for some really neat on-screen effects, kind of church up a little bit your projects and make it a little prettier on the eyes and for the end user. We're going to compile those objects with actions, and while modifying those things, we're going to also modify and track variable values so that they auto-establish on-screen functionality, because that doesn't sound like a DVD owner's manual. What we're going to do there is we're just going to have variables remember, and they're going to remember, and they're going to function, and then they're going to execute action groups with your object groups. It's going to be a lot of fun, that one. We're also going to fire some action groups that modify and retain a variable as they run, so that on a return visit it will remember and then run those action groups. I'm going to show the screen. And finally, we're going to pair action groups with Lectora's already rich functionality when it comes to quizzing and feedback. We're going to apply sort of like one of everything that we've touched on and make for some really fun and interesting knowledge check questions. So let's get going. All right, in our first step, we're going to make a simple slide-out menu. What we've got on screen here is just a button, and our button will slide out a menu. This is our table of contents, and then we're going to close that. What we've got there is we've got a, that's not what I wanted, because that's never happened before, I promise you. You've never accidentally hit a button in Lectora. All right, so what we've done here is we've got a button, and that's going to hide and show an object group. We've got all this stuff stowed away in a nice, clean little area, and we're just going to hide and show it. And let me get back to the nuts and bolts here. So what we've got all of our items here. We've got all your design and all your items that you're going to compile your table of contents with are stored neat and cleanly in this menu object group. And on click of the menu button, we're just going to toggle that menu. Now, obviously, if you had all of these objects outside of that object group, it would be a lot of hiding and showing going on. So storing all of these in there not only cleans up your left-hand pane, but also easy to hide and show for things that don't need to be visible while you're working on your page. I think that's pretty simple. Any questions on any of that? Quick little clean up your workspace object group. All right, let's get going to the good stuff. So that's a pretty simple one. That's like sort of your first tier, entry-level way to group things and keep it looking clean and classy out there. We'll move on. And this is our first step of executing an action group in sequence to form a loop. Now, as this thing cycles through, you'll probably be reading on-screen text there. And it probably sounds a lot better than I do. And there you go, we've cycled back. So implementing what we've already talked about, I have grouped all of my objects. So my iPad, all of our objects in our iPad. We'll just go ahead and hide that guy. See how nice and easy that was? See, that would have been a lot of clutter, a lot of noise on your screen. So what we're doing is we've got 3 panels. We've got 1, 2, and 3. And all we're doing is we're going to hide and show these things in sequence. So the first order of business is, well, what do we want to do today? Well, what we would like to do is we would like to show these panels. So we're going to show panel 1, panel 2, and panel 3 all on a delay. But then we have to show and hide the same panels. So we're going to hide panel 1, panel 2, and panel 3 on an even further delay. But that's just not the end of it. At that point, we've got to rerun that same operation. So at the very end, on that same delay, we're going to start over from the top. So on show of your page, we're going to run an action group to get everything going. It's going to show you page contents, including our iPad here. And then at the very end, it's going to execute your show images loop. And that's where the loop is contained, in these 2 action groups. And at that point, on show of page, execute the page contents. At the very end of that, we're going to show our images, which is going to be panel 1. Then after, and as you can see here, it's going to dwell for 10 seconds. At that point, it's going to show panel 2. It's going to dwell there for 16 seconds, give you enough time to read it. And at the very end, we're going to hide it, and we're going to show panel 3. And once that's dwelled for a good time, we're going to just run it all over again. And those will continue to run without you having to do much about it. Any questions there? All right, great. So I'm really nervous. This is my first webinar, so I appreciate everybody's lack of questioning. Makes me sound like I'm doing my job right. All right, next step. In this activity, we're going to show you how you can use action groups and object groups and create some really neat on-screen functionality that will not only sort of inherently run itself, but also just add for some better on-screen intriguing course matter. So here you can see that we've got a back button and a forward button, and being on the first screen, well, you can't go back. So we're going to log your progress through your carousel, as well as navigational inheritance of enabled and disabled feature. So as you can see here, we've got a back button that doesn't work because we're as far back as we can go. On clicking forward, we've got some nice little swooshy dooshies that will slide left and right. And check it out, we've got our back button now. Because see, it's acknowledging the fact that it's on slide 2 of the total. And then finally on the last one, we've got a disabled forward button. I think that's all pretty easy to follow along with. Pretty simple stuff. So we'll look under the hood here and we'll see what we got going on. All right, so the first order of business, obviously, is to build out our panels. We're going to hide and show 4 different panels I'm sorry, 3 different panels. I'll get into that 4th panel here in a moment. One of the key features of this page is the simple fact that you need to establish a total number of slides. In this case, we've started off, we have 3. That's just a variable value. When we work in our navigation, we are going to play off that one variable value. Instead of having to go in here and tinker around with the total number in regard to communicating the back button as well as the forward button when it comes to their start and finish, we're just going to set it one place and be one and done. And that is our variable here, our panel number total. So right now we've got it at 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to disable the back button if our panel number is equal to 1. And then otherwise we're going to enable it. So if it's equal to anything greater than 1, it will be enabled. And then we're going to do the reverse on the forward button. So we're going to disable our forward button if the panel number is equal to, there's our guy right there, our total panel number. Otherwise, we're going to keep that guy enabled. From our navigation, when you click forward, we're going to modify that. We're going to add 1 to the current panel number as long as it doesn't equal the total. And then on your back button, we're going to subtract 1 from the total as long as it equals more than 1, because you obviously don't want to drop down less than 1. Then we're just going to run our action group, show panel, which is going to run all of our stuff all over again. Just go ahead and take a preview. So right there, we're showing all of our page contents. We've disabled our back button because right now the variable is equal to 1. So forward is going to add 1 to that number, enabling our back button, switching our panels over, adding 1 more. Now we equal our total number, disabling our forward button, and at this point ending our carousel. However, that variable total I was telling you about, let's go up here and say we want 4 panels. That's all she wrote. You just update your number there. And now we have 4. And you can see the functionality is inherited based on that total number. So now you don't have to go back in and modify your conditions on all of those other actions. You got a one-stop shop utilizing your panel number total variable value. Is there any questions? All right, great. That's terrific. I feel like I'm talking very quickly, so the fact that there aren't any questions makes me very happy. All right, let's see what we got here. In this little guy, we're going to do something a little more simple functionality-wise, but also very impactful on your coursework. At least I think so. And that is, some institutions like to lock down their navigation, and as an end user, that's always a real bummer because you're trying to breeze through training and get it done. However, sitting there with locked navigation, it sort of cajoles the end user to actually pay attention to what's on screen and sit and wait and learn something. As an end user, it's always behooves me as a developer to acknowledge the fact that the end user will eventually want to go back and review. Heaven forbid he doesn't pass his knowledge check questions and he's got to go review the content. The last thing he wants to do is have to sit there and wait all over again for the entire duration. So what I'm going to show you here is a way that you can set up your navigation to remember After you've fired your action group, it's going to remember that you fired that action group, and then when you on a return visit, it's going to enable this next button here for you. So as you can see, it's going to tell you that you have to complete the interactivity first. There's a little bit of sampling of how that object group from earlier can be utilized and implemented in different ways. So we got a little alert window that pops up. So we're going to read through our page, we're going to learn something, and now we're going to interact, and we're going to show pop-up 1. So we've got another use of that little slide out menu. This will be the pop-up, and obvious, if you can see down here, we've got an active next button now. Now I'm just in preview mode, so all I'm going to do, it's going to tell me that I can't go there. You know what, I'm going to have to, oh, that's a bummer. I'm going to have to run this thing. Oh, that's what he works. So now, if I go back to that page, I've got an active next button. So to set that up is, like I said, one of your more simple action group and variable use systems here. So on show, of course, we're going to show all of our page contents, all of our goodies and our buttons and stuff, but at the very end, we're going to check for something. We're going to check if the page has been viewed. And if that variable is equal to true or 1, we're going to run another action group, which is going to be enable the next button and hide the button that shows the can't go next message, or I like to call it the next text. As you can see down here, we've got all of our tidy and neat, well-named objects in our object groups, keeping our left-hand pane nice and clean. And all we're going to do is, on show page, we're going to get out there, we're going to click an on-click of there it is. On click of our button here, we're going to modify our variable to equal true or 1, and then we're going to show our pop-up. Running that action group will not only show the current state and the pop-up itself, it also hide that next button that will show the next text alert message. It'll show our next button and do some other neat stuff. Upon clicking next, we'll hide him. We're going to establish that our page has been viewed. And then we're going to go to the next page. So then the magic happens on return visit. It's going to run this action group initially, but at the very end, our kicker is going to be our variable that we set when we click next once it became available. So now your end users will be able to navigate to a page, sit through and get all that important information and training in their lives, click next, but then, oh wait, I forgot, I need to go reread that, and they're going to be able to arbitrarily move around the course, which some would argue is pretty invaluable for an end learner. Any questions on that? Great. You guys are a great audience, nice and quiet and easy to get along with. All right, so here's the Gipper. What we've got here is we've got your standard knowledge check question. We've got general feedback, functioning as you do. But in certain instances, you're going one feedback isn't all created equal. Sometimes you want different feedback for different questions. In this case, we're going to ask the question, what's North America's largest state? Now, some would argue that it's Texas. They have a big ego and a big state to back them. Big cowboy hats, big steers, big horns, all that jazz. So we're going to say Texas. But we're not quite, are we? So we're going to try that one again. Well, if Texas, I think Montana's the second biggest state. We'll go ahead and give that a shot. Now you'll notice that we had different feedback there. We had, and I'm going to replay this slide so we can see them again. We had a version of this question, or this feedback, that's more of a warning question, gives you a second chance. And if we answer it incorrectly again, we get a different set of feedback. This one says, you know what, you had your chance, pal, time to move on. So sometimes you want to answer a question and get some different feedback. So obviously Texas was, it had its own feedback associated with it. And now Montana's got its own feedback. But also it's going to track whether or not
Hey, sorry about that. We had the internet kind of jumpy on our side. I think Tim is still in here, so I'll show that screen back over to him. Just 1 second. Thank you for your patience.
All right, welcome back. Sorry about that technical issue. We at ELB are on the height of technology, but we are not immune to their faults. So I'm just going to recap and start fresh on this slide. I don't know at what point I lost you guys, but hopefully you won't be too bored hearing me keep going about this knowledge check question. So first order of business, we're gonna establish the fact that there are several different ways to answer a question, and there are several different ways to respond to that question. By tracking and running different action groups from a knowledge check question, we're going to provide an end user with different types of feedback for different answers. So if we thought Texas was bigger than Alaska, oh, that's going to remember me. Let me just refresh this page. We're going to get a very special Texas response, but that's not all. Now we're going to acknowledge the fact that that's their second try, and they're going to get a brand new set of feedback. And if we give it another go here and we think Montana is the right answer, we get special Montana feedback. So let's get into this guy. Let's see what makes him tick. So you're going to build your page out just like you would with any other knowledge check question, and of course, implementing everything we've learned up to this point, we're going to keep everything in nice, tidy little boxes over here, all nice and organized. Let me get up in here and open up some stuff here. All right, so as per usual, we're going to start by showing all of our page content. First thing we're going to do is we're going to establish the amount of attempts that the end user has. Now, first thing we want to do is we want to clear that. We want to give them a clean slate every time. And we're also going to establish the total attempts that we'd like to give these guys. So on this one, we got one opportunity to answer it right, and then another chance to retry. So we've set that total number to 2. On click, we're going to disable the submit button, obviously, as we submit our question. And we're going to show try again if that question is empty. Otherwise, we're going to process that question. Upon doing so, we're going to establish the total number of attempts by setting it to 1. You've tried it already. Only if it's not equal to the total number. So they're going to keep adding 1 to that for every time they click that until they reach the max. Then obviously we're going to show the incorrect as long as that question is not right and it's not equal to the total amount of attempts they're allowed. So we're going to show our first version of incorrect feedback, which is our not quite, our very special try again feedback, so long as we're not maxed out on our total number of attempts. If that be the case, we show our incorrect feedback number 2, provided that the answer is an incorrect answer and it isn't equal to the total. And then our final feedback. Now this is the end gamer. This one, if it's not correct, but it does equal the total amount of attempts that we've allotted. So just like with our carousel, just like with our knowledge check question, when we establish a total number variable, we can use that in a much more robust and intertwining manner than just by setting the number manually. It covers more of a broad spectrum of use and will, in this case, determine the functionality of our screen. Some more nested functionality in our action groups here is the close button. Now on our close button, we're going to run our action group to hide the feedback. In doing so, we're going to reset our question. We're going to re-enable the submit button. We're going to hide all of our feedback that they may or may not have received. And we're going to start over. But this time, we're going to establish our total number of attempts to 3. That's going to give them one opportunity to answer this question. And hopefully by then they get it right. So let's try that again. We'll say Texas is bigger. There's our special Texas feedback. We'll hide that. It'll reset the question, re-enable the submit button. We'll guess Montana. As you can see, we've got yet another attempt. Then finally, we got it wrong again, and we've got our in-game feedback here. Telling you to move on, partner. And one might ask, well, what if we want unlimited attempts? What if we never want them to have final feedback? Well, at that point, you would just do away with that altogether. When you grade your question, you're going to show your incorrect feedback without this variable. And then you're just going to play solely on the fact and respond to specifically what they answered. Any questions on any of that? Awesome. So, in conclusion, action groups and object groups can help you clean up your layout for a development workspace. It'll make it a lot, using nice naming convention, you can clean up your workspace and make it easier for anybody to come in behind you and take over for any work that you might do, as well as go back in time, revisit your work, and remember what you did when you did it. Second thing we learned was how to fire actions and action groups for some rich on-screen effect. Makes the Lectora sort of in the coursework just sort of work for you. With a little bit of love and massage, you can make a page cycle through a carousel effect, and you can just walk away and come back, and he's still going, spinning like a top. The last thing, or the third thing we did was we're going to track the variable value and auto-establish and execute on-screen functionality. That is, on the show screen, we're going to run an action group, and if that variable is set to true or some other value that it agrees with, it's going to automatically run that and then remember that you ran it. And then finally, the custom quizzing feedback options. Based on some action groups that you execute on the submit button, it's going to determine what feedback to provide, as well as how many times you get to provide it. So hopefully all of this has taught you something. You can go out and start rolling tires and lighting fires and developing coursework just like the eLearning brothers. If there's any final questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Well, if that's everybody's questions, which is nothing, I guess, so far, but thank you so much, Tim, for your ability to go through this quickly and effectively and coherently, which is the best part. This webinar will be posted on our website at elearningbrothers.com, and you can also go check out our subscriptions and templates and all these things that Tim has talked about with Lectora. We have so many games for Lectora, so many templates that use action groups, but all these things are already pre-built for you, so you won't have to spend the time to build these things. So thank you so much for coming, and we will see you next time.